He who speaks does not know, and he who knows does not speak. And I realize that I have to be both of those. I have to be that part in me that is not speaking, that knows, and the part of me that's speaking that doesn't really know. And hopefully they're connected. And if you are open to the possibility, let the words merely quiet your minds, and let's meet on the other level, where we meet in the silence between the words. Because we come together to speak about the unspeakable. Because the rational, analytic mind, the intellect, only knows objects. It only knows what it can think about. And what we come together to talk about are really matters of the heart that are known subjectively, not objectively. And they are always hidden from the eyes of the thinking mind. Now, I, like most of you, when I was born, went into what could be called somebody training. That is, my parents were somebody, and they set out to make me somebody as well. And it's called the development of ego structure. And I developed a somebodyness. I knew who I was, or who I thought I was. I developed a set of models, thought forms that defined who I thought I was and who I thought everybody else was and how I thought it all was. And I worked very hard at that. And I became so much somebody that everybody came up to me and said, "You're really somebody." And you know, because you keep looking into the eyes of people who, the more somebody is, the more you look into their eyes to find out if you're really somebody. So when I would look into the most somebody's eyes, and I'd say, "Am I somebody?" And they'd say, "You're really somebody." Now, the predicament with somebodyness was that it had been developed from outside in. I was trained to think of myself a certain way through my parents, my education, my culture, and to get reassurance from the minds of other human beings that I was doing it right. The problem was that inside, it didn't feel good. It was as if I was wearing a piece of clothing that didn't fit right, and that I was trying to make myself make it fit. So I would scrunch my body so that it would fit perfectly, so that I could be the somebody everybody wanted me to be. And I would be in pain, and people would come up and say, "What a lovely suit, with beautiful material." So I decided that if everybody would say, "You're really somebody, you must be very happy." So I decided if they all thought I must be very happy, and I wasn't very happy, that I must therefore be sick. Seems like a reasonable conclusion. So I went to a psychiatrist, and for a small pittance, he offered to teach me how to wear his suit, which was equally uncomfortable in a different way, but it was even more somebody than the suit I had been wearing. It was like a double somebody then. So I put it on, and once I was wearing his suit, because he was a Freudian, I no longer saw people. I merely saw like psychosexual stages of development. I saw late anal retentives and early oral incorporatives. that point, I would have settled for that kind of discomfort, assuming that everybody else was as uncomfortable as I was, or else that I was so pathological, so neurotic, that there wasn't any chance that I was going to be happy, and I might as well just live it out as best I could and reap all the rewards that society showered on me for being somebody. So that when the moment came when I took off the suit, when I, if you will, transcended ego or broke out of myself, which happened in my case chemically, I had a series of awakenings at that moment. One was that all the clues I had had in myself that I was sick, those weren't correct. I hadn't interpreted those correctly. They were merely telling me that I was not being true to my deepest self. And when I broke out, I suddenly felt at home, comfortable. I felt peaceful. I felt compassionate. I felt connected to the world around me. These were feelings that I had never expected that I would feel in this life, because I always felt alienated, self-conscious, and slightly separate, because as long as you're in your thinking mind exclusively, since your mind takes an object, you're always one thought away from where life is. You're always thinking about it. So you're always just one thought away. It's the sense of alienation that comes from thinking about life rather than being life. Well, 2 hours later, when the chemical wore off, I then went back into the suit, much to my chagrin, and spent then the next many years attempting to get rid of the suit, chemically and through all kinds of spiritual practices in India, Japan, etc. And there were moments when I would be in a temple in India where I had been doing long fasts, where I had been doing meditative practices, where I had been doing a lot of chanting. I would find myself in these altered states of consciousness that William James talked about, that are available to everybody, although, as he pointed out, most people never meet them. But then he said, apply the requisite stimulus, and there they are in their completeness. And I found that through these various techniques, I could come into these altered states of consciousness. And I would look out at the world and I would see we are all sisters and brothers, or even if I went a little further into another altered state, I'd see there's only one of us, there's only one awareness that keeps manifesting in all these different forms. And I would get so clear and so peaceful and so loving and so present. I felt like a combination of the pure mind of the Buddha and the heart of the Christ. I was really out there, and my eyes, light was pouring out of my eyes, and I was full of what's called Shakti, and I was just... And I then come back to the United States, and I would go to visit my family, and my father would say just some simple thing like, do you have a job? And I would come crashing down, and I would say, going home brings me down. That was the expression that was used in those days, brings me down. And I began to have a whole list of things that brought me down. Cities brought me down, earning a living brought me down, politics brought me down. And I suddenly became aware that I was wearing another kind of a suit. It was, I'm wonderfully high, don't get near me. You know, it was that kind of thing of, I'm very spiritual, just stay away. Because I've got to keep my high, or keep my altered state, or keep that spiritual connection. Something felt wrong about it, but I couldn't quite figure out what that was. And most of the spiritual practices of the world were designed to help you escape from the trap of dualism, to help you escape from your own separateness into which you took birth, so that you could pull your awareness out of identification with your own separateness, whether by prayer, by meditation, by fasting, by any of the number of pilgrimages, whatever the techniques were. They were designed to help extricate you from identification exclusively with your separateness. And what I saw was that my body was, if I look at this foot, for example, this is a 56-year-old decaying foot. And it's decaying according to the laws of nature. It seems to be doing beautifully. If I look at my hand, I see that there's now veins and there's wrinkles and bone, and it's really getting to look like my father's old hand now. He's 89, and I can feel me growing into my father's old hand. Now, if I thought that was my hand, I would freak. But I see it's just a part of nature. It's just a phenomenon. As my spiritual work progressed and I identified less and less exclusively with my body, they were just beautiful phenomena of nature. My body was decaying gently and sweetly, but it was still decaying. And certainly investing in this was like, as Christ said, laying up your treasures where moth and rust doth corrupt. There's no doubt about it. Interesting to note in reflection that in all the years that I was a professor of psychology at Harvard and Stanford, in all the years that I was in analysis, all the drugs I've taken, all the yoga I've studied, all the spiritual teachers I've sat at the feet of, all the meditation I've done, I don't think I have gotten rid of one of my neuroses. However, what has changed is that before they were these huge, big things that they were very frightening, and they took me over, all my sexual perversities. Fears and insecurities would take me over, and now they're sort of like little shmoos, or they're little beings. They're sort of little friendly beings, and I invite them in for tea. And they're still around. They're all there. Oh, hello there. Sexual perversity. Come in and have tea. Instead of getting so caught in them, instead of taking myself so seriously, instead of taking my personality so seriously. But at any rate, during that time, those early years, since my body was certainly not a long-term good investment from an investor's point of view, and since my personality had so much neurosis in it, what I wanted to do, as many people did, was just to get rid of it all as fast as possible and go to heaven or live in La La Land or wherever you want to call that. I wanted to live in peace and non-embodied bliss. And I wanted to push these away. Peace and bliss. non-embodied bliss. And I wanted to push these away. And so for a long time, I tried the path of renunciation, which is if you sort of deny it all long enough, it'll go away. Now, that is a path for some people, because out of sight, out of mind, I realized that I had been going in the partly the wrong direction. True, our initial job of incarnates is to awaken out of the illusion that we are an identity with the incarnation. It's true. And to, if you will, awaken out of that. But that turns out to be only half the journey. You're in school, why don't you try taking the curriculum? Why don't you try being human? You see, I never thought of that, you understand, because I was busy trying to be divine. And I thought that if somehow I did it all perfectly enough, I fasted long enough, I prayed hard enough, that sort of era of my humanity would disappear and I would be divine. And what he said was, your freedom lies through your humanity, not in spite of it. The object of all of this work of life, of incarnation, isn't to get high, it's to be free. And to be free means you don't stand anywhere. It means you don't stand in heaven and look on earth, and you don't stand at earth and look at heaven. You don't stand anywhere. And your awareness is extricated from any time, space, locus, whether it's on the physical or astral or causal plane. Once I understood that my journey was not to just push away my body and my personality and even my astral identity, my Aries-ness, or my mythic or archetypal identities. Those are all part of my individual differences. Because all the body, the personality, the astrology, these are all the archetypal things of feeling. These are all matrices of individual differences by which we can differentiate one of us from another. And we get so fascinated with individual differences, we don't focus on the ground because we are so fascinated with the figure. The ground is the way we are not different, the way in which we are all the same. Now, if you go one step further in your altered state of consciousness, you look and there's only one of it looking at itself, There's only one awareness that is playing by being in these many forms, and you're only appearing to be an audience, and I'm only appearing to be a speaker, and we're talking to itself. Now, once you start to cultivate these planes, realizing you can't stand anywhere, once I had found my way out, then I had to find my way back in, and I had to say, how will I live my life in such a way to integrate all these planes of reality? How do you live your life? For example, you look out at the world and you say, we're all one at one plane of consciousness. Now, you're not just intellectually saying it. If you've really altered your consciousness, you experience the oneness of all things. But then you come back into your separateness and you say, but it's my television set. See, it's the simultaneous planes, it's planes of reality in which it appears to be paradoxical in the way in which you live. So part of what I then saw my work to be was to keep working to deepen my connection to the one, to emptiness, to the formless, to the unitive states, to the non-dualistic component, and also function within the world, but as Christ said, be in the world but not of the world. So you're simultaneously doing them all at once. Now, as you develop that quietness inside of that, there's nowhere to go, there's nobody to go there, nothing to do, nothing to achieve. Once you see that all of the forms of dualistic experiencing, of collecting experiences, is all just relatively real, it loosens the power of all those things over you. They don't compel you as much. And at first, when that starts to happen, you get a little anxious because it feels like the richness of life is dying for you. And you're beginning to experience the statement, lest ye die, ye cannot be reborn. You begin to feel death around you. You feel the emptiness of things that previously were extremely pleasant to you. And it's a little disconcerting. And some of people that are on this journey would like to say, stop, I think I'd like to go back. I would think I would like to milk it for a little more. I'd like to have just a little more of the pleasure, of the rushes, of the romantic drama. Because as long as you identify with your separateness, you are involved, for example, in romantic love. Do you love me? How much do you love me? Do you love me enough? Will you always love me? I mean, it's infinitely milkable for drama, for emotional Sturm und Drang. I mean, it's just so thick with stuff. But once it starts to die, because you come into a space behind it, it's what St. John talks about in the Dark Night of the Soul, when you have died to the world and you have not yet been fully born into divinity. In Hawaii recently, and I started to talk at a lecture. I try to keep myself from getting too far out because, well, I'll show you. I started to talk about what's called the Cosmic Giggle, the kind of humor of the whole predicament of humanity. And I was trying to relate the Cosmic Giggle to suffering, which is an interesting challenge because suffering seems so real and heavy, and how do you giggle about that? And the next day, the headline in the newspaper over the article about me said, "Ex-drug guru says life a cosmic giggle." And I could see the mind of the reporter or the headline writer. But there was no way I could do that without seeming to profane the sacred of the personality, which takes drama as terribly real. And to stand behind it and see there's the thises and that's, and see it all just as it is, without judgment, without clinging, without aversion, without pulling or pushing, just be with it just the way it is. It takes a certain deadness. And it's not deadness in the sense of you're not experiencing things. All of them are being experienced. It's just that they are in a context in which they just become phenomena arising, existing, and passing away. Was my work at that point was to learn how to live my life impeccably honor my incarnation perfectly so that I could be free through form, not in spite of form. Most of us think we're only free when we break out of forms. But as long as you're in an incarnation, there's no way out of form. You are in form. The question is, can you be free in form? For a lot of us, we thought freedom was being able to not work, for example. Freedom had to do with external freedom. It had to do with political systems. It had to do with economics. It had to do with how you spent your time. But if you are around affluent people at all, you begin to see that that kind of freedom is not free. That those people are as trapped in their minds as people who have very considerable economic hardships. And that when we're talking about real freedom, we're talking about the freedom of awareness from identification with thought. That's the deepest kind of freedom the Buddha talks about. And so the exercise becomes, how do you live in form? How do you live your life and do everything you do every day without getting lost in it? So that you are in it but not of it. So that there is all the feelings and emotions and the play, but it has the quality of play, or as like Hermann Hesse talks about it, as a game or a dance, as he talked about in the world of Shiva. The dance of life. The play or the dance. And how do you live your life in such a way that it's dance or play or sweet delight, rather than it's all so heavy and serious, and I'm so important, and whether I live or die is very relevant. So at first, you take on little things that you can sort of keep your consciousness in. For example, I go into meditation for periods of time, and I get very quiet inside, and then I come out into the world, and something comes along, and it doesn't grab me. It comes at me, and I see it. Like people's projections are interesting. When your mind is quiet, you see the way other minds project. Well, I can feel people's projections, and I become very almost shamanian-like, and I become what they project, what they expect, since it doesn't matter to me. And often you look into somebody's eyes, and even as we are going through these little projective dances, we are recognizing one another behind the dance. And it's so sweet when that happens. It is so incredibly sweet.